There's a quiet kind of madness that lives in the hearts of dreamers. It's the audacious glimmer that says, I can, when everything around screams, you can't. This is the power of delusional self-belief, a belief in oneself so bold and exaggerated it almost defies reality. Every extraordinary achievement, every story of someone who shouldn't have made it but did, is fueled by this almost unreal self-faith. It's not mere confidence, and it's certainly not arrogance or narcissism. It's something deeper and more primal, the emotional and psychological root that pushes a person to rewrite the story of who they are, even when the world insists on a completely different outcome. Welcome to Glitch Cult. Today I'll discuss with you how delusion belief changes a person entirely. At its core, delusional self-belief is believing in more than what the evidence around you warrants. It's a conviction that who you are or what you can do transcends your current circumstances, skills, or even logic. This isn't the same as healthy confidence, which grows from proven ability or past success. Instead, it often blooms in the absence of proof. It thrives in uncertainty. When a person has delusional self-belief, they hold an almost irrational faith in a vision of themselves, long before there's any validation that such greatness is deserved. Importantly, this differs from narcissism or blind arrogance. Narcissism is self-centered and craves admiration. It's a brittle overestimation of one's present self. Self-belief, on the other hand, isn't about thinking you're better than everyone else right now. It's about imagining a future self that is greater than the current self and acting as if that future is attainable. It's less, I'm superior to you, and more, I can become something superior to what I am now, no matter what you think. There's a humility hidden in it. The world may see an ordinary person, but inside, that person feels the pull of extraordinary destiny. This kind of belief can be transformative because it unshackles you from perceived limits. When you allow yourself to believe something grand and unreal about yourself, you start to behave in ways that make it real. Delusional self-belief can also spring from passionate desire or purpose. You want something so badly to change your life's direction and create something meaningful that a sort of sacred delusion is preferable to the cold despair of being realistic. It's the psyche's way of fighting back against fear and doubt. By saying, yes, I will do this impossible thing, you shield a fragile dream from the corrosive effect of too much realism. And why is this kind of wild belief so often transformative? Because belief is a precursor to action. A mind convinced of a bold destiny will compel the body and spirit to rise up. This belief becomes an engine, pumping extraordinary fuel into every effort. Obstacles start to look like puzzles rather than stop signs. Setbacks become temporary because the vision of the end goal is so vivid, it crowds out the pain of the moment. In short, delusional self-belief expands what is possible. It primes you to attempt the extraordinary, and sometimes that makes the extraordinary happen. Every journey of self-belief begins quietly. On the outside, nothing changes. You still wake up in the same room, live under the same conditions, visit the same places. But inside, something shifts entirely. You decide you will not settle for the life you've been given, the conditions you're stuck in, the limits everyone else accepts as normal. It usually begins with a thought you hesitate to admit. What if it all works out? It feels strange, like you're almost lying to yourself. You don't say it to anyone, because you know most people would laugh. But once that thought crosses your mind, it doesn't go away. It grows. This is where the rebellion begins. Reality throws evidence of your limits at you, and logic insists you stop. Every rational argument says, stay realistic. But on the other side is that new belief that tells you to keep going. And here's the part most people never understand. Rebellion cannot be belief alone. Belief without effort is fantasy. The rebellion becomes real only when you act on it, when you work for it, while being called delusional. That is the test. You put in hours nobody asked for. You practice longer than anyone thinks reasonable. You keep moving even when failure has already knocked you down. You behave as if the future you've chosen is already on its way. That is why being called delusional matters. If everyone nodded in agreement with your vision, there would be no rebellion at all. Growth demands that you step beyond reality, beyond validation, and back your conviction with action. Without resistance, there is nothing to fight against. And without that fight, there is no transformation. So the rebellion is this. You don't just say you believe, you live it. You work harder, you stay longer, you endure more. You keep going, not because success is guaranteed, but because you have already decided you will not stop. That decision itself is what separates you from the ordinary. Over the time, the vow and the effort begin to merge. Belief shields you from doubt. Effort validates the belief and makes it tangible. Together, they generate persistence that looks unexplainable to anyone else. What others call delusion becomes your strategy. What others call madness becomes your discipline. That is the essence of the rebellion. Not waiting for permission, not asking for recognition, but committing fully to both delusional self-belief and the relentless work required to make it real. It is the refusal to surrender to the life you were told to accept, and the decision to build the one you know you can reach. There comes a point where self-belief alone is not enough. You can whisper it, protect it, repeat it in your head, but without work, it remains imagination. What makes delusional self-belief powerful is when you act on it with unreasonable persistence. That is when reality begins to shift. Delusional self-belief is not daydreaming. It's not about waiting for the world to hand you proof. It's about working as if the outcome is already yours, even when the evidence says otherwise. You stay up longer. You train harder. You keep building when people laugh at the idea that it could succeed. From the outside, it looks irrational, but from the inside, it feels necessary. This is where people misunderstand the word delusional. They think it means being disconnected from reality. But in truth, the power comes from staying connected to effort while refusing to be defined by current results. You carry belief in one hand and hard work in the other. That's the balance that bends limits. Most people stop because they want certainty before they commit. They want results first before they will even believe. But the sequence is backwards. Belief comes first, work comes second, results come last. If you wait for reality to confirm your vision, you'll never move. The ones who break through are the ones who keep working while the world calls them foolish. And here's the turning point. When belief fuels work long enough, the work begins to produce evidence. Progress you can measure, and slowly, the label of delusional fades, replaced by driven or determined. The same people who once doubted are forced to see results. This is how limits are defied, not by talking yourself into greatness, but by showing up every day as if greatness is inevitable. You become someone others can't easily explain, because by all logic, you should have stopped long ago. But you didn't. And that persistence, fueled by belief, eventually delivers results that look impossible to anyone else. The pattern is simple. Belief protects you from quitting, work carries you through difficulty, and together they create transformation. Without belief, work collapses at the first failure. Without work, belief fades into fantasy. But combined, they form the engine that pushes reality forward. That's when delusional self-belief stops being an idea and becomes visible. You look back and realize the person you once imagined is now who you actually are. The world finally catches up to the version of yourself you've been living with all along. Every journey of profound self-belief follows a clear arc. It begins in doubt and smallness, passes through conflict and resistance, and arrives at transformation. This isn't theory. It's the psychological path anyone walks when they dare to believe in something greater than themselves. It starts in a place where you feel stuck. You convince yourself you're average, that your limits are fixed, and life will not change. This is the early stage, the moment where dissatisfaction and yearning live side by side. It's the point where you wonder, what if there's more to me than this? That small question becomes the beginning of change. Then comes the spark. Something lights up inside you when you refuse to accept that the story ends here. It's the moment when you recognize that those who live their dreams, they're no different from you. That spark is when the shift happens. When I wish I could turns into I will. It's the quiet birth of belief. You decide to believe in a version of yourself that doesn't exist yet. And once that decision is made, it changes everything. From there, the spark grows. You take steps that your old self would not take. You show up, you try, you work. Others call it strange or reckless, but inside, you know it's necessary. Fear of failure doesn't disappear, but it doesn't hold you from taking actions. You act, not because you are guaranteed to succeed, but because belief demands action. And with persistence, real transformation starts to happen. Slowly, the results of your hard work starts to appear. Then, one day, the breakthrough happens. And in that moment, you realize that what started as delusion has become reality. You have become the person you once only imagined. This is the full journey, from doubt to spark to bold action to transformation. It is a cycle, one that repeats whenever you aim higher. And each time, it changes you. You don't just achieve, you evolve. That's the real power of delusional self-belief. It is not about pretending. It is not about arrogance. It is about carrying a vision strong enough to push you past doubt, past hesitation, past failure, until you become the person you were always capable of being. Reality bends slowly, but it bends. And when it does, the delusion is no longer delusion, it is simply your new life.